This man was walking on the beach with his surfboard. Suddenly, he slipped and fell. The fine sand took him down. Fortunately, he could hold on. But the danger had not been relieved. Because just a small movement would break this subtle threshold. He looked up at the surfboard that was not far away. Behind him were a cliff and a dilemma. The man's name was Alvaro. He broke up with his girlfriend due to his adultery not long ago. Depressed, he came to the sea alone to surf. He didn't expect to be caught in an accident like this. The sand was too soft. It couldn't bear his weight at all. Alvaro slipped down again. He dared not relax. His whole body could only be stretched by the strength of his muscles. Just then, his cell phone rang. He wanted to pick up the phone and ask for help. He carefully carried one hand behind his back. But when he touched the phone, his whole body continued to slide down. This time, he slid all the way to the edge of the cliff. There were sharp rocks below. It was impossible to go up. At this time, Alvaro counted silently. He was judging the frequency of the wave hitting the reef. When the next wave rose, he jumped down decisively. He succeeded. A wave caught him, slowing down the impact of descent. Alvaro tried to swim up a reef. Good. He was still alive, and it seemed that he had a scratch on his hand. He rose from the rock, observing the surrounding environment. When he stood up straight, a wave hit the reef. He fell down again. It seemed like he was hit on his waist with a rock. He couldn't stand up. Alvaro's head hit the rock. He fainted. When he woke up again, he found that his feet were paralyzed. How could he get out of this damn place? Alvaro quickly took out his mobile phone and was ready to ask for help. But at this time, the phone had been flooded, completely useless. There was no way out. To stop the bleeding wound on his hand, he took off his clothes and wrapped the wound up. He shouted out desperately for help on the shore, but it was sparsely populated here. Moreover, he was now more than 10 meters away from the cliff. All the cries for help were swallowed up by the waves. He shouted for a while until he lost his strength and fainted again. It was almost dark when he woke up. He knew he couldn't sit here and die. The tide would grow high at night, he would be submerged. Enduring severe pain, Alvaro was going to swim to the shore with both hands, but his body didn't listen to him. As soon as he got into the water, he had a cramp. His whole body couldn't move. He could only let himself sink down. In a trance, he thought of his girlfriend. She forgave him. The two were reconciled and were about to kiss. Alvaro was awakened. He realized that he must survive. As he approached the bottom of the sea, he splashed hard, step by step to the surface. This time, he survived by fighting to the death, successfully landing. But bigger challenges were still ahead. A man was injured when he fell into the sea, all unconscious and having a wound on his waist. Barely anyone came to this area. Did he really have to wait here to die? What was more serious was Alvaro's wound was inflamed. Every movement produced severe pain. He dared not act rashly. After writing a huge distress signal on the beach, he hid in a cave waiting for rescue. It had been more than 24 hours since he fell down the cliff. Wound inflammation, hunger and thirst became the biggest problems. Just then, God gave him a chance. He found his surfboard washed ashore. With it, at least he could float to the sea to find someone for help. Alvaro crawled towards the surfboard. But when he nearly touched the surfboard, a big wave knocked him unconscious. Then wave after wave came up, dragging him back into the sea. At the critical moment, he took off his backpack, hanging onto the reef, not letting himself be washed away by the waves. Just like that, Alvaro maintained this position until the tide ebbed. A seabird stopped by. Thinking that Alvaro was dead, it picked up the rotten meat on his hand impolitely. Alvaro woke up in an instant. Now he was on the verge of dying of thirst. He found a can on the beach. There was nothing in it but seawater. At night, he found behind the reef a bottle and a piece of tin foil. These were really useful at that time. Alvaro relied on his knowledge of survival in the wild, making a simple water collector. Now he just needed to wait to drink clean dew. But good things didn't last long. The temperature plummeted at night. Alvaro hid in the middle of the stone cracks to keep warm, but he couldn't keep shivering. He looked at the dark sea. Finally, he saw some good news in the distant sky. There was a flash of lightning. It was going to rain. He prepared water bottles and cans, opening his mouth and getting ready. But the rain came quickly and went fast. Alvaro just drank a few drops, the rain stopped. Fortunately, there was a little rain in the bottle. He finally relieved the thirst. After that, Alvaro felt a strong sense of hunger in his stomach. The next morning, he lied on the beach waiting for the seabirds to approach, knocking it down with a stick as fast as he could. But he was exhausted. He wasn't quick enough. After a day and a night without food, he cried bitterly. Suddenly a cell phone ring caught his attention. A man was struggling down the cliff. When he was at a loss, his cell phone rang. Turning it on, he found that it was his parents' video call. He hurriedly called for help, but the two in the call just kept smiling. It turned out that this was just a recorded video. At this time, Alvaro was dying. He felt it coming. On the verge of dying, he saw several familiar figures on the sea. It was his good friends who surfed with him. Alvaro forgot the pain and swam towards them. Everyone talked and laughed, gliding on the sea as usual. The next second, he was brought back to reality by consciousness. Because of extreme weakness, Alvaro had an illusion. He lied on the beach without moving. The sea smoothed his painted distress signal. He was almost giving up. Looking at the current wave approaching and receding, suddenly, he found a small boat on sea level. Was he right, or it was just a hallucination? He looked up and tried to confirm it, making sure it was not an illusion. Someone came to save him. Alvaro made his last effort. He picked up his surfboard, wanting to go in the direction of the ship. But in the tide, the ship had disappeared. He held the surfboard and tried to slide his hands. He hoped the rescue fleet could find him. But gradually, he was getting exhausted. He fell asleep holding the board. It wasn't long before he lost consciousness and fell straight off the board, letting the pressure of the sea carry him down. During the process, Alvaro kept recalling a beautiful past with his girlfriend. Shortly after, he gave up his resistance. A ship stopped beside him. It turned out that the rescue fleet had found Alvaro. The diver brought him back to shore. After more than 50 hours of struggling, Alvaro was finally saved. Lying on the hospital bed, he recalled this experience. Alvaro didn't feel the rest of his life there would be any more accidents like that. He felt that he finally understood the meaning of living. He didn't know how to cherish his family before, even love and friendship. But in the past 2 days, it was all these forces that kept him alive. Cherish the person in front of him, it was probably the biggest achievement in this accident.